Welcome, you filthy exiles. So, I've had a few people hit me up on how I'm getting my Herald of Purity build working. If we look at the POB, we're actually hitting about 80k DPS per sentinel, and we've managed to get up to 5 sentinels without the helmet enchant so far and do it relatively cheaply. We're essentially max capped in our resistances, and we've got how much armor? We've got nearly 5,000 armor. I'll just update this tree actually. Yep, we've got 11,000 armor, and yeah, so we're doing quite well. So how do we get to this stage? I'll just put D&D mode on. Okay. So how do we get to this stage? How does this work? What are we doing? What are we doing differently to what other builds are telling us? Well, the best way to get Herald of Purity to work, especially at a low level, is by proccing poison. And we're actually using both Herald of Purity and Herald of Agony. And I'll show you what I've done in the gearing pretty much to set this up. So if we have a look at the gear here, what we can see, a couple of elder items, they're very low level, like they're low level items. This is like, you know, item level 77, and this is item level 79. So, you know, it's early league start, we're not going to get great gear. But anyway, the concept is we're going to poison our enemies with Herald of Agony. We're going to have Herald of Agony up. And then our sentinels are also going to apply vile toxins, and this is going to do 47% increased damage with poison and continue to stack poison as well. So supported skills deal 5% more damage with hits for each poison on the enemy, up to 9 hits, up to 9 stacks of poison on enemies. This is quite powerful. Then what we've done on our gloves is essentially get an Elder Glove with level 16 poison on hit and equip it with Cyclone, Fortify, life gain on hit, and maim. So not only are we poisoning enemies, we're maiming enemies on hit as well, and we're sustaining a constant Fortify because we're always spinning. And then on top of that, we've capped out our reservation, because the problem with Herald of Purity is the more skill gems that you apply to it, it scales out with the multiplier. And obviously, first up, we're not going to have a Circle of Guilt and a Circle of Nostalgia straight away. And all the right ones. As you can see, I've got a Circle of Nostalgia, it cost me 1x. But it's not the right Circle of Nostalgia, because it shouldn't have Agony Crawler deals increased damage, it should have mana reservation reduction. But this is just to scale me up in the early game. So our way around not having reservation limiters is using the Coming Calamity, and I would suggest the easiest way to get a Coming Calamity, the same way that I have done, is to basically drop it in your box, jeweler it to 6 sockets, and then just fuse it up to 5 links. And even if you get it to like 6 sockets, let's have a look at the price check on this. Yeah, so this is currently worth 35 chaos in its own right. So if you can get 6 sockets on this, you can sell them, and then if you 5 link it, you can get a decent chunk. So if we have a look at this, let's see what early league 5 links are worth. Yeah, so you could probably sell that for 1 exalt after you get your 6th link, if you can do it in the first couple of days of your league. So that's essentially how I'm rolling it, because what Coming Calamity will do will give you +2 to socketed Herald gems, so it's going to increase your Herald of Purity up to level 22 once it maxes out. And then it's also going to cap it at 45%, all Heralds at 45%, which means you'll only reserve 45% for your Herald of Agony and your Herald of Purity. And your Herald of Agony will be a 5 link, because your helm that you want to get is an Elder Helm with supported level 16 minion damage. And we're running Vicious Projectile, Feeding Frenzy, and Pierce, because we want to apply that poison proc to as many enemies as we can in a wider sphere, and you would have seen it in the B-roll at the start of the video. So, and then basically from there, your Purity minions are going to go across and just wipe deck. That's basically how this build works and how I've geared this so far. Now the other few things that I'm running there is I think you can run Cold Point Daggers, which gives you +3 to skill level gems. I actually find that you're better off running a, what do they call it, a claw. And the reason being is the life on hit. So right now my life on hit is 42 plus 50 on this eye gouger, which gives me an absolute, what's that, 92 life on hit as I spin to win, basically. So it's ultra sustainable in fighting most things, including bosses, delves, everything. So right now, while I die, I can do T10s really easily with very minimal and pretty, let's be frank, not great gear. And also not even having a 6 link. So, you know, we're doing quite well. On top of that, my claw has increased minion damage as well. So I found minion damage in my helm, in my claw. If you can get it on your gauntlets, even better. But I have increased damage with poison on my gauntlets, which is where I wanted to be. Some resistances. My belt that I've used is simply just a really simple leather belt that has 100 plus health and gives me at least 20% resistance on every stat. And that's just to push my resistances up. I always run, when I start League, with a Bisco's collar. That's mainly because you want to be able to capitalize on currency as best you can in the early League. On top of that, I run Golem Knuck Boots, and that's going to give you mana regen. It's also going to give you increased quant, 16% quant. So right now, what I actually have in my rarity find is up to 47% rarity find, plus when I slay enemies, I'll get another 142% if I slay magic enemies. So that's going to get me up around 200% by slaying magic enemies and 47% standard. And then I'm also going to have 39% quant by slaying normal enemies, and you're going to be doing that a lot in your early maps. And then another 16% on top of that for everything else, which is quite a good stat. So 2 key items you should watch out for. Bisco's collar you'll pick up 4 right now in League start. Let's have a look. How much is this worth? 6 chaos, so really cheap. And I think I got my Golem boots for about 10 chaos. But they will go up, so yeah, they're about 10 and 11 chaos. So really good League starter items to accumulate currency really, really quickly. For my shield, there's a couple of options you can run with your shield. Now, I've moved to a colossal shield with 1,000 plus armor, and that's key. You need the armor, especially in this league. Now I've got all resist and I've got life on my shield. I don't need to worry about huge stats yet, and if I really want to upgrade this, I'm going to get an Elder Shield, or I'm going to get a, I think they call it Vengeance, which when you block, and this build uses block, and we'll go into the build tree next, is going to give you 1,500 armor or whatnot. But in this case, not Vengeance. I'll put it in a picture. It's the shield with the hands on it. It's the Toll Breach shield. Anyway, so that's where I'm at. If you can't get a decent shield, and you can pick these up for about 2C, the other alternative is to use a Lionized Remorse. This is going to give you 164 plus, actually this one gives you what? 194 to health. It's also going to give you 1,600 armor, and it's going to give you 5% to block chance. It's basically a beast of a shield, and the last time I checked it was about 9 chaos on the market, but I'm not going to check it again right now, so fuck that. So that's pretty much the mechanics of how this build works, and we're just going to run Quicksilver, Basalt Flask and a Granite Flask, and basically get Life Flask with instant gain to life. Ring wise, you're obviously going to want a Circle of Nostalgia as soon as you can, and a Circle of Guilt, and the modifiers you need essentially, so for your Circle of Guilt, for your Purity minions, you want Purity minion or Sentinel damage increase, and you also want the mana reservation reduction. For Herald of Agony, for the Amethyst ring, the Circle of Nostalgia, you're going to want the mana reduction, reservation reduction, and you'll also want the Chaos resist. So right now, this build currently has 12% in plus Chaos resist, which is where we want to be moving towards. All right, we've just spent about 10 minutes explaining the mechanics of this build. So let's open up the tree and have a look at what I've done. So I'll put this tree in POB, or in the description. I'm also going to do a breakdown of how I leveled this build up, because if I explain that, it's going to take like 30 minutes more, because it's a bit of a balancing act. But essentially, I'll explain my logic and how I built this tree. So, I'll just catch my breath. Obviously, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to level up from here. Now, I picked up these, you can go take the strength nodes. This will save you one node in here to one skill point allocated otherwise. But I actually found it was a better idea to take these nodes. So I essentially went through the meta nodes here, got to Sanctity. Now, I went down, I picked up Grave Pact. I ignored all of this. I went down, 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 and I got to Bloodless, and I got the Soul of Steel. The reason why is I wanted the armor, I wanted the resist, I wanted the health, straight up. And also, this is a bit of a pain in the ass when you're leveling later in the game because you're just picking up flat strength nodes earlier in the game as you're scaling. This makes more sense because it's much easier to kill stuff in the early areas of the campaign as opposed to later in the campaign. Then I came back up. I actually went to the right, and I picked up my Resolute Technique, and I went up, and I picked up my minion node cluster up here, where I basically went up to Righteous Army, Spiritual Aid, Redemption, and then I picked up my Sovereignty and my Purity of Flesh. This was to control my mana reservation for later in the game. You don't have to do this straight away, but I've done it anyway. Once I tick over back to using non-Coming Calamity Chest, this will actually be quite useful, and obviously more health. Then I obviously picked up my node here to apply. Now this node here is important, and I'll explain that because of this, but we'll explain that last because that was the last thing that we've done up to date. So Dex is also an issue, so you'll probably need to pick up Expertise. So once you've done that, you want to come back up to Sanctity here, and you want to go back up and get Discipline of Training, Retribution, move up to Sacrifice, Spiritual Command. You want to pick up Quick Recovery. You want to get up to Enduring Bond so you can buff up your minions, up to Arcanist Dominion. Then pick up Heart and Soul. That's going to increase your mana and your life pool. I did pick up Lord of the Dead. It's a little bit of a redundant node because you don't get zombies or skeletons in this build, but it is a good node to have. I then moved up and I picked up Golem Commander because we want to run 2 carrying golems and we want to have them equipped with Meat Shield. I probably should have went through gem setup, but it's in the path of building. Just follow the path of building for gem setup. It's a bit wishy-washy at the moment. I'll do a better fleshed out build guide when I get to the very end, but this is just sort of a progress update. And then obviously I went back down, picked up Cruel Preparations, and this is going to give me my increase to overall health, and it's also going to give me all resist. So then I came back down and I went to the right. So this is basically a crossroad node, and then I picked up my a dual socket so I could apply my Ghastly Eye, and you want to use Ghastly Eyes, and minions deal 15% increased damage if you've used a minion skill recently. That's going to give you a huge advantage and also increase maximum life on these nodes. And then I went down and picked up Constitution. So effectively right now we have 5k EHP, and this will increase because now we'll be allocating health nodes. So the last thing that we've done is I went on and I checked the new keystones, and there's 2 really good keystones that will buff you up, and you can get them quite cheaply. So one is Pure Agony and the other is Cult Leader. So what this cluster jewel does, and we'll come over here, is Pure Agony gives you 1+ to the number of Sentinels of Purity. So essentially you're going to get an extra Purity minion. It's also going to give you 5 to maximum virulence, which is what you get from Herald of Agony. It's also going to give you 20% increased damage while you're affected by minions deal 20% increased damage while you're affected by a Herald. So that's going to buff your minions up 20%. Now normally you would run a Coveted Fortress jewel in here, but I actually found you don't need to do that anymore because of the way the new tree works. It's actually redundant. So the next thing that you'll get is Cult Leader. So that's the other new keystone, the other new keystone that's in this league. This gives you minions deal 35% increased damage while you're affected by a Herald, just flat. So essentially this node cluster here, including the 10%, so that's 45%, and that's giving us 65% increased minion damage, and that's going straight to your heralds. You're getting an extra purity minion out of a purity sentinel out of it, and you're also getting virulent stacks. And virulent stacks are essentially what your Herald of Agony does when it poisons an enemy, and that's going to increase your poison damage and your dot on enemies as well. That's pretty much the key build tree. As for ascendancies, you're going to basically get Radiant Crusade first, you're going to get Unwavering Crusade second, you're going to pick up Bastion of Hope, because what I did notice is they changed the Radiant of Faith, and armor now no longer scales off reserved mana, it scales off reserved health. I think that's how it was previously, but they've changed that. So if you're reserving health and you play, and if you play this ES, you're going to get a shitload of armor, but I'm not reserving health, so fuck that shit. So you're going to get Bastion of Hope. This is going to give you 50% chance to block attack damage every 2 seconds, and it's also going to mitigate you being stunned. It's also going to give your minions block damage, the ability to block damage and spell damage. So it's pretty powerful. And then the last one you're going to get, the last ascendancy, once you've done your Uber Lab challenges, is going to be Harmony of Purpose, and this just means that you and your party members will now share Power Frenzy and Endurance charges, and you have 10% to gain a Power Frenzy or Endurance charge on hit, and because we're cycloning and we're hitting everything, that will essentially just be a constant 9 charge buff that's always on you. So it's going to push up your resistances, it's going to push up your damage reduction, it's going to push up your mana regeneration, your crit, it's going to push up your movement speed, attack speed, that's basically the build so far, where it's at. I was going to cut this video up a little bit in I thought not to. I thought I'll just do it on the fly. Now the dual setup or the gem setup that I'm running is the key stuff is in my gauntlets. I've got Cyclone, Fortify Support, Maim, and Life Gain on hit. That's for sustainability, it's for defense, and it's for essentially maiming enemies, applying a debuff on enemies, and this was also a technical 5 link, and it poisons enemies on hit too. For my boots, just running Flame Dash and faster casting, and I got a portal gem. For my helm, because it's got minion damage support built into the helm, I've got Herald of Agony, Vicious Projectile support, Feeding Frenzy, and Pierce. In my shield is just Immortal Call. Now you can use Fire, Shield, or whatever the fuck, Molten Shell. I found Immortal Call is better just at lower levels, because it's going to save you from the bullshittery of the new delirium enemies. In my claw, I'm running Carrion Golem, Holy Relic, and Meat Shield. And then in my chest, I'm running Herald of Purity, melee physical damage support, Feeding Frenzy, Vile Toxins, and minion damage support. And when I can get my next node, I'll try and roll that to 3 red sockets in here, and then I'll pick up Brutality as well, because if you're running Brutality, while you can't proc elemental ailments on enemies, poison still works, and that's why it's so powerful. This concept of poison and physical damage is so powerful, because poison is not an elemental, is not elemental. So abilities that stop you from applying elemental damage doesn't actually affect poison. So it makes sense to use poison as a form of dot damage on enemies, and not to mention that most enemies, unless those with poison resistance, are highly susceptible to poison as well. Anyway, as far as my... there we go. As far as my Pantheon, I'm just running Soul of the Rowan King and leveling that up, because being stunned is basically death. And then I'm also running Soul of Relikesh as well, because I unlocked it and I was like, yeah, fuck it. It makes no real difference at this point. I do have a Clarity Gem embedded in here somewhere too, there. And that's just obviously because sustaining this is a little hard at the moment. I need my channeling reduction modifier, or enchant or crafting ability, but or So there'll be a reduction to mana while channeling skills have reduced mana cost while channeling, which will apply to this. It'll make it a 3 mana cost per second. Essentially, we can get it down to nothing. And that's basically the build as it stands right now. That's the concept. I'll put the POB in the description. I'm actually going to think of. I'm thinking about putting together a blog or a website for my channel later today and into the next week, and I'm going to do a fleshed out guide there, and I'm going to do more of a description of what you actually need to do and how to get this to work. But essentially, this is how it's working right now. As you saw in the B-roll, it's pretty powerful. It drops bosses and it drops conquerors like they're nothing. Drox is nothing to this guy. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So anyway, if this helps you, I know the video is a little bit long, just capped over 20 minutes and a little bit more. But if this helps you, like and sub. If you think it's shit, downvote me. And until next time, thank you and bye.